seen many tragedies, here are 15 of the most dangerous airports in the world. Flying into an airport that was not only sketchy to fly into, but to be a pedestrian in proximity to as well. That's the reality for anyone living around or flying into the Princess Juliana Airport or St. Martin Airport in the Caribbean island of St. Martin. The airport started life as a military airstrip back in 1942, but became a civilian airport in 1943. The airport, as far as airports go, functions and looks as it should. But there's one runway in particular that makes it one of the most dangerous airports in the world. Runway 10 is over water, which makes it challenging for pilots to perceive altitude when flying with visual flight rules. As a result, pilots tend to rely on their instruments, which may or may not be the soundest approach. But what choice do they have? There's a beach to avoid, mountains to navigate, and white sandy beaches full of holidaymakers. The travel path is so unique that there's even a warning sign by the beach that says jet blast of departing and arriving aircraft can cause severe physical harm, resulting in extreme bodily harm and/or doesn't get featured on the History Channel's show Most Extreme Airports for no good reason. It certainly doesn't get ranked as the 7th most extreme airport either, without good cause. The Courchevel Airport in France will astound you with how treacherous it is. So much so that even the most experienced pilots get butterflies having to fly into it. The airport serves a ski resort, Courchevel, in the French Alps. Its runway is only 1,762 feet, and it's set at a gradient at 18.6%. These two features alone show you just how dangerous this airport is. Because of the mountainous terrain surrounding it, there is no go-around procedure. A go-around is an aborted landing, which can often be used if a pilot or air traffic control isn't happy with something. So at this airport, you're pretty much on your own. And that's not even the worst of it. At the Courchevel Airport, there is no instrument approach procedure or even any lighting aids. Landing in anything but perfect conditions, such as with fog or low cloud, is both unsafe and nearly impossible. So at this airport, you're pretty much on your own. And that's not even the worst of it. At the Courchevel Airport, there is no instrument approach procedure or even any lighting aids. Landing in anything but perfect conditions, such as with fog or low cloud, is both unsafe and nearly impossible. Number 13. Lukla Airport in Nepal. It's hard to imagine that one of the busiest airports in a country is also the most dangerous. But that's the title that Lukla Airport in Nepal has. This airport is just 40 minutes from Kathmandu and is the country's busiest and most dangerous. This airport serves the many brave men and women who hope to ascend Mount Everest. The airport's only runway was last renovated in 2001, but it was built by Sir Edmund Hillary in 1964. Sir Edmund Hillary is a New Zealand mountaineer who was the first confirmed climber to reach the summit. He helped build the runway 10 years later. It's just 1,729 feet long, which is a far cry short of the likes of the northern runway at Heathrow Airport, which is 7 times that at nearly 13,000 feet. The runway is, of course, one of the main reasons why this airport is one of the most dangerous in the world. The less room you have, the less room for error you have. The airport is also 9,500 feet above air level, which means planes have to land at faster speeds. Number 12. Toncontín International Airport in Honduras. The Toncontín International Airport in Honduras is so dangerous that efforts have been made to replace it. Soto Cano Airport in Comayagua, which is currently an airbase, would be the first pick. It's hard to imagine anything other than hair-raising landings at this airport. And you'd be right, for it even appeared on the History Channel's show Most Extreme Airports as the 2nd most extreme airport in the world. It lies 4 miles from the heart of Tegucigalpa in Honduras, and even the most confident pilots struggle with it. The approach to the airport is challenging even in average weather, but is completely abhorrent when the weather isn't the best. Runway 02 is difficult to approach due to its short runway and mountainous terrain. So many planes have crashed here, most deadly, that people applaud once they descend safely. Pilots must make a 45-degree turn once they get around the mountains, and have just minutes before they have to touch down in a valley shaped like a bowl. If that's not bad enough, it operates with old navigation equipment, adding another challenging element. Fortunately, in the wake of so many deadly crashes, the Honduran government has announced it will be building a $213 million international airport near the Palmarola military air base. Number 11. Barra International Airport in Scotland. Barra International Airport in Scotland will not disappoint when it comes to hair-raising landings. Not only is it one of the most dangerous airports in the world, but it's also the only airport to have a beach as a runway. That's right, a beach. The Barra International Airport is in the wide, shallow bay of Traigmore, which sits on Barra's north tip in Outer Hebrides, Scotland. The beach has 3 runways, and these are marked with wooden poles. This setup means that the twin otters that use the airport land into the wind. Twin otters are a Canadian aircraft that are versatile enough to have floats, skis, or tricycle landing gear. They are popular in remote areas, particularly those with a lot of bush. If you have a reasonable understanding of tides, then you'll also know what happens to sand on beaches. It goes under the water as the tides change. So at high tide, the runways are under the sea. And if that's not challenging enough, they aren't very long. The airport's elevation is 5 feet, and they are 2,621 feet long, 2,231 feet long, and 2,776 feet long. Number 10. Kai Tak Airport in Hong Kong. Even the most experienced pilots will want to call out sick after hearing about the awful landing conditions at Kai Tak Airport in Hong Kong. This airport in Hong Kong is about as dangerous as it gets. First of all, there's only one runway. To be honest, that's probably a good thing as it limits the number of planes coming in with terrified passengers on board. The runway extends into Victoria Harbor, and there are mountains on 3 sides. The mountainous terrain leaves very little room for error. Then, where there are no mountains, there are tall buildings. The pilots just can't catch a break. To avoid all the giant hazards in the way, pilots have to take a very sharp turn before taking off or landing. Then, as they approach the airport, they have to be on the lookout for the pilot lamp near Kansai Mountain. When they see it, they have to turn the plane at a 47-degree angle using visual measurements and aim the plane at the runway. All this has to happen at an altitude of fewer than 984 feet and 1.6 miles from the landing site. Number 9. Don Muyang International Airport in Thailand. The Don Muyang International Airport in Thailand used to be one of the most dangerous airports in the world, but it has fortunately relinquished that title with a few safety upgrades. Most pilots and passengers will surely be pleased. The airport was built at the beginning of World War I in 1914 for the very purpose of war. It served its purpose well, and the decision was made to open a golf center at the airport's entrance so that soldiers waiting for flights had something to fill their time. Oddly enough, the fact that no other airport had done such a thing didn't put the developers off the idea. Even today, this golf center is operational, but it's not able to be used while aircraft are landing. The Don Muyang International Airport was considered dangerous not only for its recreational activities, but its pollution. It was one of the highest polluting airports in Thailand for nearly a century. When the Suvarnabhumi airport opened, the decision was made to close Don Muyang down. But after safety concerns arose over cracked runways and overcapacity, the airport was reopened. Number 8. Congonhas Airport in Brazil. Many things can cause an airport to have the title of dangerous, but short runways and absurd flying angles are often the leading causes. In the case of Congonhas Airport in Sao Paulo, Brazil, though, slippery runways are to blame. Because of poor drainage, pilots often fight a losing battle against slipperiness, which has had some devastating consequences in the past. Even though the runway lengths are average, several people have lost their lives in plane crashes. In 1941, a plane crash-landed and 13 people passed away. 3 years later, fog choked the city, causing a plane crash that cost 16 people their lives. One of the latest tragedies was in 2007 when Airbus TAM Airlines crew flew off the runway and into the storage area. All 187 passengers and crew and 12 warehouse workers lost their lives. Something good did come out of these tragedies, though. Authorities sat up and took notice. The second busiest airport in Brazil now has grooves in the runways, which are designed to collect excess rainwater. This means that pilots can have far more confidence landing without slipping and sliding all over the runways. Number 7. Wellington International Airport in New Zealand. New Zealand is a dramatically beautiful country known for its rugged terrain, stunning scenery, and mountains that are dotted along the length of the South and North Islands. But it's also home to one of the most dangerous airports in the world. Wellington International Airport in Rongotai, Wellington is 3 miles from the city center. That point is more relevant than you think. When you fly into this airport, you feel like you're either gonna end up in someone's living room or the ocean. There is no in between. It's the 3rd busiest airport in the country, so you can rest assured that the pilots are familiar with how to land there. But that doesn't make it any easier. The Cook Strait creates a unique channeling effect and strong and gusty winds. They don't call it Windy Wellington for nothing. Even the most experienced pilots and those in large aircraft can find themselves facing an uphill battle with Wellington landings. Fortunately, Air New Zealand's impressive track record means that most passengers feel entirely at ease for the takeoff and landing, even as rough turbulence can have you gripping the armrests tighter than usual. Number 6. Kansai International Airport. What do you do when land is scarce and overpriced, but you need an airport? Well, you build an artificial island. That's how Kansai International Airport near Osaka Bay came to exist. Within a short distance of Osaka Station in Japan, the Kansai International Airport stands out from the crowd. It was designed by Renzo Piano, an Italian architect, and sits on an artificial island to combat the severe land shortage. It was then inaugurated on September 4th in 1994. The island is 2.5 miles long and 1.5 miles wide and can handle domestic flights. But how well it can handle them in the future remains to be seen. Not only does the island have to contend with hazards like cyclones and earthquakes, but global warming too. It is expected that in the next 40 or 50 years, sea levels will rise so much that the airport will be lost to the ocean. It got its first taste of that in September 2018 when Typhoon Jebi hit. Seawater flooded the island, which reached the engine area of some planes and hit the runways. A tanker then crashed on the bridge that linked the airport to the mainland, meaning that several people were stranded at the airport. Number 5. Gibraltar International Airport in Gibraltar. Imagine going about your daily business in a busy European city only to find yourself stuck in traffic because a plane is landing. It sounds absurd, or more of an emergency situation than anything, but it's daily life for those who live around the Gibraltar Airport in Gibraltar. The airport, which also goes by the name of North Front Airport, is just 546 yards from the city center. And that's no exaggeration. It literally cuts right through the center, including a busy street called Winston Churchill Avenue. This street literally intersects the runway, so if planes want to take off, the road has to close. It's for this reason that the Gibraltar International Airport is often thought of as the most dangerous in Europe. It used to only be used as a British Navy emergency airfield, but it serves a far more common purpose today. It's used for bringing in tourists and hauling cargo into the area. On the History Channel's TV show Most Extreme Airports, this one comes in at number 5. Still, it caters to over 300,000 travelers annually, along with 380 tons of cargo, so it's clearly working just fine. Number 4. Madeira Airport in Portugal. The Madeira Airport in Portugal was classed as one of the most dangerous in the world because of its short runway. It was only 5,249 feet long, which was nowhere near long enough to give even the most experienced pilot any peace of mind. In 1977, TAP Portugal Flight 425 became the deadliest airline accident of the time in Portugal, and it was decided that the runway length needed to change. The problem is, the airport is built on the side of a cliff, so there's no land to add an extension, no matter how necessary it really was. But the airport company wasn't gonna let that stop them, especially when it's a matter of life or death. Instead of waving a magic wand and wishing for more land, they used pillars to support an extension. But to do such a job, you need the best industry experts. Brazilian company Andrade Gutierrez undertook the mammoth task and succeeded. Such was the high standard of their workmanship that they won the Outstanding Structures Award for Bridge and Structural Engineering. But even though the company has done a wonderful thing, that doesn't detract from the illusion of danger. You are still literally flying off a cliff with minimal room for error. Number 3. Juanchoi Aruba Airport in Sabah. The Juanchoi Aruba Airport in the Dutch Caribbean island of Sabah is, without a doubt, one of the most dangerous airports in the world. And no, it doesn't have any slippery runways or tricky weather conditions that make it unsafe. It's entirely to do with the runway length. The Juanchoi Aruba Airport has the world's shortest commercial runway. It spans just 1,312 feet, which means it's only a little bit longer than an average aircraft carrier. That's almost unheard of. But that's not all. Not only does this short runway make any pilot break out in a nervous sweat, but it's also on the edge of a steep cliff. So if you get it wrong, then you may just plunge off the side and into the water. There isn't even a bright side to this. If you don't end up in the water, then you may find yourself dangerously close to the high hills on the other side instead. Fortunately, for these very reasons, jets can't land at this airport. Only small planes like Twin Otters can land here. There's also only one regular airline that journeys here, and it's a 12-minute plane ride from the island of St. Martin. If you're not fond of flying, though, then you can always take the boat. Number 2. Svalbard Airport in Norway. Hearing of airports having runways on beaches is absurd enough. Then you hear about airports that are classified as dangerous because their runways are mildly slippery. So you can only imagine just how dangerous the Svalbard Airport in Norway is, because its runways are made of ice. That's right. Planes have to take off and land on cold, hard, thick, permanent ice. The runways are built onto the ice and undergo continuous repairs and maintenance as the seasons change. The airport is the main one that serves Svalbard in Norway, and it's just 1.6 miles from Longyearbyen. It also has the title of the northernmost airport in the world that has public scheduled flights. The airport was finished in 1975, but had to undergo maintenance in 1989 because of ice irregularities caused by global warming. The problem is, those complications won't get any better. In fact, studies now show that those ice irregularities will only get worse, leading to warping. Imagine trying to land a plane on a warped, icy runway. It's any pilot's worst nightmare. This means Svalbard Airport in Norway will eventually have to close. Number 1. Ice Runway in Antarctica. Antarctica is not the most forgiving of environments, and given its freezing cold temperatures, you can expect a less than conventional type of runway for any arriving planes. The ice runway in Antarctica is easily one of the most dangerous in the world, largely because it's not really a runway at all. It is a sea ice runway that's made for wheeled aircraft at the start of the summer Antarctic field season and is used until early December. Then the sea starts to break it up. This runway is used for its proximity to McMurdo Station, but there are also 2 other runways in the area that get used once the ice runway is no longer fit for purpose. The runway has compacted snow that feels like landing on concrete, according to some pilots. However, because it is used for 450,000-pound planes laden with cargo and passengers, it's a little bit terrifying. The plane sinks slightly into the ice when it lands, and they have to use laser lights to measure the settlement rate. If it drops lower than 10 inches,